I have been watching a lot of new 4Ks, but one of these made me stop the film because the picture looked that good. But before I get talking about one of my new favourite 4K discs of the year, I have a big stack of other titles to talk about as well. Some great, some a bit less great. So hello to you, dear viewer, and without further ado, let's get talking about these brand new 4K releases. The first of these new 4K titles I want to talk about is the Agatha Christie 4K collection from Studio Canal, featuring 4 classic adaptations of her stories on the big screen. And as you can see while I wave the box around, it is very shiny with this incredible brand new artwork which carries across onto the individual 4 cases inside. Before I show you what's inside this box set, let me talk about the films themselves and the quality of the 4K discs. If you're unfamiliar with this set of films, you're in for a treat because these are murder mystery stories. We have 3 films following Poirot, the very famous character from Agatha Christie's stories, and the 4th film follows another very famous character, Miss Marple. And in each one of these films there's a big cast of characters played by some very famous actors of the time, and it's up to the central detective to work out who has committed the murder. Some of these films have since been remade by Kenneth Branagh, but these original versions are the superior ones. So if perhaps you've seen those films and you might have liked them, then definitely you want to go back and watch these. It's the first one, Murder on the Orient Express, which I think is the best of the lot. Directed by Sidney Lumet, one of the greatest American filmmakers of all time, he directs this superb cast of characters with Albert Finney playing Poirot in the central role. To me, this film is iconic and I love watching this. It is never boring, no matter how many times I have seen it. And to have it now on a 4K disc is a superb thing because it looks beautiful and sounds beautiful. I also have a soft spot for the next 2 films. We have Death on the Nile and Evil Under the Sun. This time Poirot is played by none other than Peter Ustinov, giving an equally charming performance as the central character. Like in the first film, we have a tremendous cast of actors and it is a joy to watch them interacting with one another because these are some actors that may not have appeared in any other films together, and here they are collected in such a great mystery. Then we have The Mirror Cracked, where we see Angela Lansbury take on the role of Miss Marple. For me, this 4th film doesn't have the same charm and appeal of those 3 Poirot movies. I mean, there's still things to like about this, but for me, it is personally not one of my favourites, although I imagine there are people out there that prefer that one over the other 3. I was very impressed with how all 4 of these looked and sounded, and if you want to get these films but you don't want to get the box set, they are being sold separately as well at the same time as this. So if you just want Murder on the Orient Express, you can get that one, or if you want all 4, you can get this set. Let's have a quick look at what you get in the collector's edition box. Like I said, it's a rigid hard case which has this very shiny design to it. The one thing I will say about the packaging, and I've said this before about Studio Canal releases, and I have a few more of them to talk about in this video, that they still insist on printing the BBFC rating logos directly on the collector's edition packaging. They have them on the front here, they have them on the spine, they have them on the underneath for good measure. I know that film releases in this country are required to have the logos on by law, but you will see that every other label in the UK now does not print them directly on the collector's edition packaging. They have them on pieces of paper or card that wrap around, or some even use stickers. So it's a thing that Studio Canal keep doing, unfortunately, because I know a lot of collectors are frankly not happy about this. I know it's a very small issue, but it's something that could be so easily avoided and would ultimately sell more of these collector's editions. Firstly, you get the 4 films, and each one of them is in a separate digipack case. So for example, Murder on the Orient Express looks like this, and inside you have the 4K disc. Something to note is this box set is 4K only, so you don't get Blu-rays included. And sorry, just to go back to the ratings logo issue for a minute, doesn't this look so much better without any logos on, rather than having them plastered on the case? The other 3 look like this, and as you can see, they've got this uniform art style to them. And I know that the standalone releases have this same artwork on the slipcovers. You also get a collector's edition booklet with some writings and some old poster designs for the films. And speaking of posters, you have 4 single-sided posters featuring the new art for each one of the 4 films. So for me, it is a near perfect box set with some fantastic films, especially the original Sidney Lumet Murder on the Orient Express. Moving on, I have more brand new 4K releases from Studio Canal. This time they're going into their Hammer horror vaults to bring some of them to the 4K format. Here we have The Horror of Frankenstein and Scars of Dracula. Each of these has their own limited edition rigid hardbound box, and I will show you what's inside each one of these in just a moment. But let me talk about these films, because these are from a period of Hammer's history in the early 1970s when they were trying to reinvent these characters and these stories. I'll say straight away that I do not enjoy these films as much as the heights of Hammer horror, like The Curse of Frankenstein, for example. In The Horror of Frankenstein, we see a new approach, much more focusing on character, and you could call this a character study of sorts, even though I hate that term. But here we have a Victor Frankenstein played by Ralph Bates, and we see his relationships with women, his relationship with his father, and much of the film is focused on this. Of course, we're looking at his goal to achieve new life, but we don't actually see Frankenstein's monster until the final third of the film. So even though I know they're going for a different approach here, I couldn't help but feel like I wanted to see Frankenstein's creature earlier in the film. It also doesn't help that you don't have the icons of Hammer, Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee. Instead you have Dave Prowse, who people know as being the man in the suit of Darth Vader, playing Frankenstein's monster. While there are many elements that I like within the film, it all doesn't quite come together for me like the other Frankenstein films. Then we have Scars of Dracula, and this does have Christopher Lee back as Dracula, and he seems to be having a great time, and every moment that he is on screen is really enjoyable, and every moment he's not, I'm just wishing that he would come back. I do really enjoy the design of this film. I like the castle, and I like the other characters as well. There's more romance, sex and nudity in this film, which is not something we're necessarily used to seeing in Hammer horror movies, but this was the beginning of the 1970s and attitudes to these things had changed. Both of the 4K discs look and sound great, but I would only recommend these to people that love these characters and the Hammer movies. These are not the cream of the crop in terms of the films that Hammer made. But like I said, individual elements are very much enjoyable, and these discs do have some brand new special features, including some conversations about these films. Inside both of these cases you get the films in a digipack. There's a 4K disc and a Blu-ray. There is a collector's booklet, again with writings about the cast, the crew and the film. And you get 2 single-sided posters. One has the brand new artwork, whereas the other has an older poster design. It's the same with the Frankenstein one. You have the films in a digipack, you have a collector's edition book, and you have 2 posters. One is the new design, and here is the other one. All in all, great 4K discs, but by far not my favourite Hammer movies. It is great to see more Hammer stuff coming to the 4K market, because Hammer have been doing some great releases themselves, and now Studio Canal are going back and upgrading some of those older ones that they released on Blu-ray many years ago. One more Studio Canal release to talk about, and I have been having a great time with this. It is the New Avengers television series, which has been restored entirely in 4K. This is the follow-up series to the original Avengers program. This time we see the character of Steed joined by Gambit and Purdy. And some people argue whether this reinvention of the Avengers in the 1970s was effective or not. I certainly think it is. And this really makes me want to go back and watch the original series, which is not on Blu-ray as far as I'm aware, or I would love to see it restored to 4K if that's even possible. But anyway, I've been having a great time with this. Each of the episodes looks immaculate. I think the restoration is incredible. Many of them look like they could have been made today, except for the fact that it very much looks like the 1970s. As you'll see here, you get 2 digipacks which hold all of the discs, and these are the ones that fold out like a book, so you have each disc on a different page. As well as the discs themselves, you get a booklet with writings on the series, and you also get this reproduction of a New Avengers comic book from the 1970s. So it's a great set from Studio Canal. I love the design of the box as well. I just, again, wish the logos were not on here. Now, moving into some different territory, I have the 2 Tron films that Disney have released on 4K very recently. We have the original Tron film, and then we have Tron Legacy. I had a very enjoyable time revisiting both of these because I hadn't seen them in the longest time. The first film, Tron, is essentially like an art house science fiction movie. It doesn't make a lick of sense. I can't even follow it whatsoever. All I know is that Jeff Bridges plays a video game designer who gets sucked in to his own world. Everything else just completely goes over my head, but I still find it so fascinating. With all of the visual effects, which some people say look very dated, which yes, they do, but this is a very unique looking film. The design of this film is science fiction maximalism. Nothing here is understated or minimal. This is intense design, and every single frame of this film is almost like an assault on your eyes in terms of the colours and the fast-moving visuals. So for a film that I used to think was kind of boring and very dated, is now something that I look on as being completely unique in the history of modern cinema. But then we come to Tron Legacy, which is a sequel that I'm not sure anyone was asking for when this came out 15 years ago. But this was a point in Disney's history when they were really still taking chances. It's a film that I still think doesn't have a great script, particularly with the dialogue. But then when we come to visuals and of course the music, Daft Punk soundtrack, the energy of this film still gets me going, and it is just exciting to watch. Even the de-aged Jeff Bridges, who looks like a video game character from the time, doesn't ruin the effect of this movie for me. And this is a great example of we didn't know what we have until we missed it. Because at the time this film came out, critics were a bit harsh on it. People said, what is this rubbish? And now we look at what is coming out of Hollywood and these big blockbusters today, and I wish we could go back to something like this, which still had a bit of ingenuity and a bit of heart. We don't get something like this in 2025. And I haven't seen the new Tron film yet, but from what I've heard, it doesn't have remotely the level of heart and craft that this film does. People have said it feels very soulless, but I need to watch it for myself. And in terms of the 4K image with this one, this is from a 2K digital intermediate. So it is upscaled, but it looks fantastic. The high dynamic range in this film really does a lot to compare it to the older Blu-ray, which didn't quite have that same punch to it. So yeah, great time revisiting these 2 Tron films, and I go in cautiously into watching the third one. Another 4K from Disney, this time from the 20th Century Vault. This is Edward Scissorhands, the Tim Burton movie, which I think is one of his greatest. It's a film which I never saw growing up, and I only watched it when I got into film as an adult. And I always thought this was a horror movie, and maybe my parents said don't watch it because it'll scare you. But really this is a film about love and relationships and family, and it is not a horror movie at all really. Although it is Tim Burton's twist on the classic Frankenstein story. I love revisiting this film. I think Tim Burton is one of those directors who has such a unique vision that even his films, which I don't like all that much, are still a joy to watch. And I thought the 4K presentation with HDR looked beautiful. This is a very colourful film, and yeah, it just looked pristine to me. So that's Edward Scissorhands. It's great to see more Tim Burton coming to 4K. Now we just need films like Ed Wood. That would be a great 4K to come soon. Now we have an incredible film coming to the 4K format for the first time, and this has been sorely missed on Blu-ray as well. And I'd heard many great things about this film over the years, but I wanted to wait for a great release to come. And now we finally have that from Curzon. It is the film Central Station from Brazilian filmmaker Walter Salles. There was a period on Letterboxd when this was one of the highest rated films on the platform, but then they changed their algorithm so it would stop people in certain areas kind of overwhelming the rating of a film, because basically anyone who had seen this in Brazil was giving it 5 stars, and that was kind of toppling over the rating and making it one of the highest rated films of all time. I think it's still in the top 100 films on there, and it is an excellent film, starring Fernanda Montenegro as this woman who writes letters for people on the street, so people that can't write themselves. They pay her and she'll write a letter, and she'll even send it for them. Through a random encounter, she ends up meeting this young boy who wants to send letters to his father, who he doesn't know, and they end up going on a journey together to find the boy's father. This is an incredibly touching film. So much heart, with great characters that are complex, and they have their downsides. It is human, and it is about the longing for a connection to parents, to families, and not just humanity, but the shared humanity where two strangers can be thrust together. One can be a child, one can be much older, and they can still connect and help one another. It is also a beautiful looking film and looks gorgeous on the 4K restoration. Lots of warm tones which give the film such a warm feel. So yes, after all this time waiting to see this film, it has not let me down, not in the slightest. And this is a fantastic release from Curzon. You get the film on 4K. There is a great commentary on here from the filmmakers. And on the Blu-ray, there are some other brilliant special features, including a making of. Next, we come to a 4K release of the British film Boston Kickout. This is from Bluebell Films, which is a label I hadn't heard about before. But apparently they've been around for a long time, but they're just now starting to do some new discs. It's a film I didn't really know too much about, but I saw that it had early performances from John Sim and Andrew Lincoln. And the story is about these 4 guys who grew up together. Now they've finished school, they're becoming adults, and it's very much about, well, what do they do with their life? One of them has an older brother who is a bit crazy, he's violent, he's aggressive, involved in crime. It's about how do they fit in with their families and their parents. Some of the interactions here are quite funny. But then you have John Sim's character who is falling in love with his cousin. And I mean, that's a bit weird. And there are some scenes where, well, they have sex in this film, which just really doesn't sit right with me. Maybe I'm weird in that. That weirdness isn't even addressed in the film, and you could kind of say it's just a thing from the 90s, but I don't think that was a thing in the 90s. It's a film that I like elements of, and I like seeing these early performances from these actors that I know from many other things. But as a film, it doesn't quite work for me, particularly because of that whole cousin thing. It's a film I'm surprised to see get a 4K restoration, to be quite honest, but I'm sure fans of the film will love that it has. Now, there were some issues I did spot with the restoration. You can tell that there was quite a lot of damage and scratches and lines in the image. And in certain scenes where it's close-ups, where these lines run across their faces, the lines have been blurred out, but like digitally kind of scrubbed out. So maybe it's something that some people won't be that bothered with, but I mean, I could tell in some of these scenes, you can see where there are blurry splodges on the faces of some of these characters. I don't think this was done by some algorithm in a program. I think someone has gone in and hand-drawn in the blurring of the image to kind of fix some of the damage to the print. So if you're someone who would get annoyed by seeing these things in the image and you would notice them, then I would not recommend this release. But I've saved the best till last. This is the release that I think is one of the greatest 4Ks of this year so far. It stunned me right from the opening scene. It is The Sound of Music. Surely everyone knows this film, so I'm not going to go describing what this film is. This was a film that I had seen in my childhood. The songs from here were very much a part of my education. We would sing them in choir at primary school, and it's a film I have seen a lot in my lifetime. But this new restoration, which I believe the film was scanned in 8K and they've done an incredible job with it. It looks absolutely stunning. Right from the opening scene where you see Julie Andrews singing on the mountaintop, the vista behind her and the detail in her and her face and her costume is just absolutely perfect. And rewatching the film now on the 4K disc made me realise just how remarkable this film is. First of all, the bedrock of this film is the music, the Rodgers and Hammerstein songs, and in any director's hands that probably could have made a pretty good movie adaptation anyway. But then you get a director like Robert Wise, who worked in a whole load of different kinds of films. He made other musicals like West Side Story, which is amazing as well. But he made The Haunting, which is a gothic horror ghost story. He made The Andromeda Strain, which is science fiction. Even going further back in time, he made a great boxing movie called The Setup. And in his hands, as the director and the cast and crew that's assembled here, it makes this film perfect. So if you're a fan of this film, you probably have the 4K disc already. But if you were a bit less of a fan, but you were kind of interested and on the fence, then I would say definitely go for this, because in terms of a classic restoration on a 4K disc, this is one of the greatest that I've seen this year and perhaps ever. You know, it's up there with things like Spartacus and My Fair Lady in terms of classic films from this period that have come to 4K. So absolutely incredible stuff. And I would just love for more films to get this kind of attention. So there you have it, a big stack of some of the 4K discs I have been loving watching lately, including, like I said, The Sound of Music, which is one of the best discs I've seen all year. I know I haven't talked too deeply about each one of these releases, just in the interest of time, but if you have any questions about these films or these discs, then please do leave them in a comment on the video. If you would like some more film recommendations and reviews from me, just click the video that's on screen right now. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you soon.